back, the charging curve, ready to get at it. We're going to try something a little bit different today. I'm Will, of course, and over on the other side here is Jeff.
Hey guys, sorry it's been 3 years, but we're back.
We are back. So today we've been talking, we've been looking at the news, we've been seeing some things. One of the things we saw pop up is a new energy coalition. So we're gonna take this opportunity. I'm gonna set the stage, and then we're gonna I don't know, get under the hood with this thing. We're gonna dig a little deeper, and we're gonna ask Jeff, our utility and distribution expert on the line, um, some questions about this topic because it ties together some of the things that we've been talking about, I think. So, new energy coalition, it's called Utilize. They're starting some interesting conversations, promising some deeper research, but they've, basically put out a bunch of statements that are based on some research that's out there. So, we've talked about some of these topics. It ties together things like grid utilization, increase demand for electricity, opportunities for value-driven growth on delivery of electricity, and smart load management solutions. So, a little background on this group Utilize. They are corporate backed. So this is, sort of a, you might call it a special interest coalition. It's backed by Tesla, Google, company called Span, who does smart panels, and Carrier, HVAC, cooling, heating, air. So these are companies that are out there. They put together a coalition. They're spending money to, influence policy, to start conversations around capacity growth on the electrical grid, primarily in North America is where they're talking about. They definitely have a vested interest in um, smart energy solutions, storage, stable and cheap power. So you've got, data centers for Google. Tesla does a whole bunch of stuff with electric vehicles, stationary storage, solar, and all these other things. And, Carrier and Span are in the smart energy game. So there are interests there, but it's still, a pretty compelling topic. A lot of that is a lot of the premise that they're putting out there is based on a recent Duke University analysis that says that basically it's an analysis of 95% of distribution and generation in North America. And one of their core findings was basically the grid is underutilized. So system utilization is around 53%. So we've got this enormous infrastructure for generation, transmission, and distribution, and it's set up to support a few peaks that happen a few times a year for, maybe only hours. So you've got all this other, almost half the capacity, that's kind of sitting there idle. And as the conversation tends to go, you hear about capacity increases through electric vehicles, data centers. Data centers are big right now. And the only way that we're going to be able to support these is by pumping huge, millions and billions of dollars into more capacity, more distribution. And they're kind of saying, well, you've got 47% that's not being used a lot of the time. So how can we be smarter about this? How can we put policy in place? How can we put programs in place? How can we monitor and understand how to better leverage the resource we have to squeeze the most value out of it and save ourselves money? So at least that's what they say. It's a bunch of corporations, so But for our purposes, that's the really cool thing, I think, and what we want to talk about and what we want to dig into is stuff around that topic. So with that background, um, I put some questions together. Jeff has not seen these questions,
Nope.
and so we're gonna pop this puppy open and
Well,
Start
You
ratcheting down.
Yeah, you took us up to the top of the roller coaster, and now we're diving right in.
I'm
Good
diving deep.
good intro. Kudos to you. You've done all the heavy lifting. I'm a dead weight that you're pulling along in this episode. So, but I have done zero prep. I haven't looked at any of the questions. So, whatever my response is, you're getting my complete, authentic, informed but unprepared remarks. But based on the intro that you have there, it really ties into a lot of the stuff that we've talked about. The highway graphic, where an interstate highway where you have a whole bunch of cars and hardly any cars. The numerator and denominator of grid cost and rate making, essentially, where you have system cost and system usage that make that up. So yeah, I'm excited to jump in. Let's go.
Yeah, and a quick, point of reference on that, those things that Jeff was just talking about, the highway graphic, numerators, denominators, that stuff's in podcast episodes, I think 2 through 4. So if you haven't seen those, check them out. But first, let's hang out with us here on this one. And if you like what you heard so far, don't be afraid to like us early stream here. It's
Yes, please.
okay.
Yes, please.
You,
Yeah.
you can like at any time, early, often. Like I say, just like voting.
Yeah.
Anyways,
We all have lots of different accounts, so you can sign in with all your different accounts and like us and all the different platforms. I'm sure you want to do that. So yeah, excellent.
okay. So yeah, with that backdrop, I'm gonna just jump in here. So we hear a lot about the grid being built for peak demand, but underutilized much of the time. We just talked about that.
Mhm.
From a utility and systems operation perspective, what does grid utilization actually mean in practice? So why do we build it so big? Um, and why
And
aren't we already doing some of the things that they're talking about at a bigger scale?
yeah, I mean a big part of the reason behind that is it is a real time delivery item. You are getting whatever you're getting from the grid. My laptop, this light that's on in front of me. I wish I had a brighter light. I look like I'm in a shadow or in a closet or something here. But all the stuff that is connected and utilizing electricity, it is happening in real time. It's not like you schedule when you're going to plug this stuff in, and somebody's like, okay, cool. At 6:15 p.m., I'm going to make sure I spin up that 1 kilowatt of electricity to support your devices. That's way more than what the devices would be, but there's no coordination. You, everybody as a user of electricity, we plug it in, we turn stuff on anytime we want to, and it works. And there's a whole, I don't know that we've looked at a whole grid graphic before, but it's a whole lot of wires, a whole lot of protective devices, things that generate electricity. Big things far away, smaller things closer to us as we're using electricity. The solar panels on my roof, and all that has to work. So for that to work, it's similar but different. Similar to an electrical panel. So you have your electrical panel at home. There's a main breaker. There's a whole bunch of sub breakers, and you have to lay that out so that you're not oversubscribing the panel, because otherwise you just keep tripping the main breaker and everything goes off. But you also can't allow a fire to start because you're not tripping and you're carrying way too much current. So there's similar things that happen there with the grid. So yes, in a perfect world, you would only ever build just as much as you need, and you would make sure to match how the grid is utilized with exactly how it's built. But that would depend on a lot of coordination between grid operators, generators, and balancing authorities, and all of the producers and producers and consumers of electricity all at one time. And again, it's a real time system. So this isn't something that you can get, give me a 15-minute heads up and I'll figure that out for you. No, it's now. It happened now, and it has to be figured out now. So that's why there is essentially headroom and some safety factors built into this, because unlike an interstate highway, if if you and I haven't driven in a car in quite a while, Will, but if you get, rush hour, everything is completely packed, like the graphic that we had where it's just wall to wall traffic. What happens?
It stops.
You
My
stop.
light doesn't come on
Yeah,
in
it
this
stops.
analogy, I
It
think,
stops.
right?
It stops, so you slow down. So there's more time in your commute, which may have, effects, but it's not usually a life or death thing. If that happens on the grid, if it's so congested that in the analogy, traffic has to stop, that means you're shutting off parts of the grid so that the whole thing doesn't go down. That's what would have to happen in that case, which means the grid operator has to decide, okay, where is the overload coming from, and how can I isolate that and keep the most of the grid up as possible? Because if people lose electricity, if hospitals lose electricity, there are a lot of critical things. If it's in the middle of the summer, air conditioning loads for especially older populations, right? Or in the middle of winter with heating loads for older populations or sensitive populations, that very much can result in tragic deaths. It's a whole different level of negative potential impact if those bad situations happen. So that's kind of a bit of a view into why that isn't already solved, and it's just a big problem. It's very complex. You have millions of users. You have millions of little distributed generation producers. Like again, the solar on my roof is coordinated as part of the overall grid. So to do that, if you really want to go, all right, here's what we've got. Here's what we want to utilize. It's got to be orchestrated extremely well, which is really, really complex. So it's either super expensive or it's not quite perfect. Um, there are technologies to make that happen, but we're not all using all of the technologies that allow that to happen, right? We don't all have a furnace from the last 2 years or a air conditioner from the last 2 years. We don't all have EVs that have the latest communication standards. And utility systems haven't all been upgraded and updated in the last year or two, right? So there's all of these things are updating in waves on the consumer side, on the utility side, on the generator side. So it's a big um, maybe I don't want to use the Titanic analogy. It's a very large ship, so it turns very slowly.
Interesting. Yeah, and I mean, I think that so when we talk about it, hey, this study that says that, we're using we have 53% utilization, um, that covers 95%. And it's a study, so there's numbers. They looked at the numbers a certain way, and they're representing them a certain way, and it's at scale and aggregated across or averaged across sort of everything. So when we talk about things like this, average system utilization at 53%, are we really? So I think that are we really talking about excess available capacity everywhere, or is it more complicated because of um, like localized bottlenecks, regional constraints? The transformer in this neighborhood really can only handle, really is at capacity, or is really close to overcapacity. So some of the things you touched on is like not everybody is using these technologies that can enable and we'll dig more into it, but like smart grid programs, or not everybody's got solar and a battery on their house, or an electric vehicle that can suck up extra capacity, and maybe not everybody's in a place that actually has capacity to spare. Could you maybe expand on some of those more nuanced things about it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because you look when you look at this, that study I'm sure was done at the bulk, what we in the industry would call the bulk electric system level. So essentially, more or less the transmission system, which can go down to depends on the area, but transmission is maybe as low as 34 kV, whereas the highest voltage in transmission in the US is 765 kV. It's not everywhere, but could be 765 or 345 thousand volts. So, but yeah, that's you look at that from a bulk electric system standpoint, and you're like, okay, yes, everywhere there is 53% capacity. We would call that a peanut butter. You just spread it everywhere. It doesn't work like that. So there are
Because
some.
peanut butter's sticky,
It is sticky. It is tasty.
especially if it's cold. Doesn't
Yeah,
spread that good.
yeah. Here in the Netherlands, peanut butter is called pindakaas, peanut cheese. It doesn't taste like it tastes like peanut butter, but yeah. Um,
Peanut cheese.
yeah, there are lots of
Good.
there are lots of fun words. Gums, like the gums in your mouth. Tandenvlees, tooth meat. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, back to utility stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's not it is not that simple. There at the highest at the higher levels in the transmission system, yes, you have those opportunities, but then you could have a distribution substation where you have a transformer that's at capacity. It was supposed to be replaced 3 years ago, and because of supply constraints, they haven't been able to get the right transformer there. Or you have conductors that were sized for previous load studies and planning, and they just haven't been upgraded yet. So it's not as simple as saying we have 50% opportunity everywhere, but there is a lot of opportunity generally in a lot of places, and that's so what they looked at was sort of uh, two fancy words that I don't know if it's just utility people, but I seem to hear this a lot in the industry: temporal and spatial. So what it sounds like they looked at is primarily temporal, which on a daily basis, how much daily and seasonal basis, how much is available and how much is used over the course of 24 hours. And there's a lot that's available, again, at the bulk system level. But then it depends on where. That amount isn't available everywhere. There are parts of the system that are overloaded and are having issues, and there are demand. I don't know that we've covered demand response programs, but there are places in the summer where they're calling large industrial customers to shut off for a couple hours because they don't have enough capacity in those areas already. So yeah, that's the spatial part that gets a lot more complicated.
Hmm. How about how does this so aside from localized constraints, how does this excess in capacity impact the overall cost of electricity and infrastructure?
Yeah.
From a planning standpoint,
So
and why would increasing utilization of these assets, matter from a financial standpoint?
so it matters for and it is potentially financial, but there are other good things about it too. So in a scenario where you can much better match load to system capacity in both in temporal and spatial, time and where, where and how, not where and how, time and and where physically, um, then you have an opportunity not only to reduce the cost of electricity. This goes back to the numerator denominator situation where the system has a cost, and that cost is if you can well, sorry, in the numerator the system has a cost, largely a fixed cost. The denominator is how many units of electricity you're able to serve with that fixed cost. So the more the more load you can serve with that fixed cost, the lower the price gets because your denominator is growing. So that's one of the benefits is it can allow for downward rate pressure. So rather than building and building and building and that cost is going up and up and up in the numerator, um, you're helping to either partially offset, or actually reduce the cost of electricity depending on how big the magnitude of that is. So that's a big one, right? Everybody would like to pay less for electricity. But the other one is if you can do that much better, it makes it much easier and faster to connect new things to the system. So a data center, for example, where they might be looking at because they have to think about, okay, where do I want to put it? Where can I put it? Where am I going to be able to get electricity? And make a decision based on all of that. But if you're able to better coordinate production and use of electricity, then you likely can better accommodate a large load or even a medium load, like maybe a small data center, somewhere now, rather than telling them they're going to need to wait 3 years because you need to build a new substation, build a new transmission or sub-transmission line, which it takes a lot of time. So yeah, speed and cost definitely can benefit from that scenario.
Interesting. So could as we're talking about this, something comes to mind. Been working in the electric vehicle space for well over a decade at this point, and one of the things that was talked about a lot early on that I don't hear much about anymore as it relates to EVs is all these EVs are going to bring the grid down. Everybody plugging in their vehicle and adding that capacity to the grid is going to bring the grid down. Um, that didn't happen to my knowledge. As we've gone from like basically no EVs to several million EVs in the U.S. Is that an example of utilizing the excess capacity, smart management? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how did we avoid that thing that everybody in certain parts of the media was saying was going to happen, and why you shouldn't have EVs and stuff like
It's
that?
it's like if
How do
everybody
we dodge that bullet, man?
yeah, it's if everybody flushed the toilet at the same time, then I don't know.
There's no more water.
All the pipes explode. I don't know if you have you
Yeah.
heard the myth before. Um, it's because everything is generally spread out. There's a lot of randomization in how and when people do things, and there has been you combine that with some um, incentives and potentially management of those EVs and other things, where people are going, all right, well, I can pay a little bit less for my electric fuel if I wait to start charging until midnight, 11:30, whatever that time is. So yeah, sure, I'll do it. Doesn't matter to me. So that avoids that for that one person or however many thousands of them decide to do that. That ensures that capacity adder that might put the system over the top in a bad time is just fine because you're adding that at a time when the system is way down in a trough, and
Take
that's the temporal component. Yeah,
so shifting the load through um, what consumer behavior because they respond to money, a
correct.
lower rate.
Yep, yep. And it's nice. I mean, so I don't know that we've talked about consumer behavior, incentives, and program design and things like that, but your Goldilocks is Goldilocks the right analogy? Your best case scenario is
The sweet
something that
spot.
sweet spot, yeah, is a technology or a use of electricity that is eminently flexible. Like I don't have any pain by it happening in a different time, and is large and easy to make that happen. that's that is an excellent opportunity for load shifting and load management because um, yeah, the negative, or I guess flip that on its head, something that is very painful is air conditioning in the middle of a hundred and I don't know 120-degree day. Um, yeah, I'll give you an incentive, Will, to not have your air conditioning on tomorrow because it's going to be 120 degrees in the afternoon. Um,
Cool.
do you want to just suffer through it and it'll save you like $3.
I will spend the $3. I'd spend six probably.
Yeah, exactly. And there's some people that can't, right? So in sensitive populations, like if I mean, generally younger and older people that can't manage their internal temperature as well, it could result in literally a death. So there are literally some people that cannot make that change, no matter how much money you might offer. So yeah, it's that's why there is like in the electrification conversation, space heating and cooling is a big one. So like Carrier is part of that group, right? But you can do things with preheating or pre-cooling. Um, it's more difficult than an EV because like what do you want? Don't charge it 4 to 8 p.m. when all the air conditioning's running in the summer. Okay, fine. Start charging at 9 or 10 or 11. I mean, I really doesn't matter because it's going to be charged by like 2 a.m. anyways, and I'm going to be sleeping. So literally makes no difference to me.
Yeah, EVs example of a shiftable load that you could pretty much do anytime.
Yep,
Water heaters are another one that has a lot of flexibility because especially with a tank,
yep.
where you can have stuff preheated, but um, the things that are real time tied to um, lives, um, powering traffic signals, street lighting
Yeah,
at night,
yeah.
like
Hospital.
other examples that are maybe less scary,
Yep.
um, but people could still die. Not to make light of that. Anyways, okay. Another question. If so,
Will,
we yeah.
this is really important. I like your shirt.
Oh yeah, man.
A game.
Had these made. It's my company, TGV.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yep. It's not that hard. There's companies out there that you send them a logo and they will make you a shirt if you pay them money.
Looks good. And we both
Yeah,
are in
yeah.
the same color scheme today. Good
We're
for us.
ready to go.
Sorry,
Um,
right, interrupted your train of thought there, but it was important.
yeah, I bought five and I wear them every day now
Good
during the week.
uniform.
So,
Don't have to
yep,
think about
feels like I'm doing something.
it.
Whoop, gotta get to work.
At work.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Perfect.
You only see me from the waist up. That's right. Pop out of bed, throw a shirt on, ready to go.
Nice and easy.
Um, all right. So we know that that demand for electricity is growing. Um, how much additional load? Like, let's talk about it more broadly, right? Because we kind of touched on like, hey, locally, you could have some problems that are being worked on right now, like, and upgrades that are being done, probably happening everywhere all the time. Just you know, in general. But from a what did you call it? The bulk standpoint.
Bulk electric.
Um,
Yep.
yeah. How much additional load can we like realistically support with today's infrastructure before doing like major, not already planned, system upgrades? Because again, these things are, and well, maybe you can kind of shed light on that too, but I assume these things are planned out over many years with schedules and budgets and things like that. But just at today's baseline, You know, how many more, how much more load in general? Like a lot, a little. I don't know if you could put it in terms that a non-industry pro. How many more data centers can we have, Jeff? How much quicker and better can my AI get? Or how many more EVs?
Yeah, we'll do EVs. So this was an example that I looked at in the PJM interconnection area. So PJM, it's a region within the U.S. It originally started Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland, but it's much larger than that now. But it's still called PJM. Anyway, they you can actually look at their daily bulk load curves, right? So you can see if you look at like the absolute highest load day in the last 5 years, you'll actually be able to see where the PJM system gets up to like its highest possible, because then it doesn't keep going up. It goes, oh, I'm not pointing at the camera. It'll like, yeah, it's like a little flatline blip, and they call things to stop using electricity. So that industrial customer example, big loads, like, hey, this we need to shed some load. You, gigantic consumer of electricity, like a paper mill or something, you're using a ton and you have signed up for this program to cut your electricity in these pretty dire circumstances. Shut it down, and so you can actually see that on those days on the load curve. But you can look at that, right? So you know what the capacity of the system is, more or less. I mean, this is not precise, but it's pretty good. And then you can see the big trough, right? So that it almost looks like a sine wave, not quite, but you have this huge ramp up through the day, summer day especially, as the cooling starts to kick in and people are going to work and it's getting hotter and hotter, and you get this load, and then it'll fall off as everything starts to cool down. So you can see how low that load goes too. So then you can kind of look at that difference between high and low, and like if you could completely fill in that trough, that's your opportunity for how much more load could be served, because you know it can do it. It did it earlier that day. You can just do that all the time theoretically, right? That's the perfect match of grid capacity to load. Um, and so it would be very difficult to do that. But assuming you could, you would be able to, in the entire PJM area, which is it's absolutely massive, but every household having 3 EVs, it would be totally fine.
Is that every single family home or every
Every
household?
every car, essentially every
Ooh.
car being electric for everybody that lives in that area. Excuse me. All electric, no problem. There's enough excess grid capacity um, to be able to do that.
Sweet.
Um,
Sucks to be a data center because EVs are going to use it all up.
Got to get in early.
Get in
Yeah,
early. Come on, people.
yeah. But yeah, you could.
All
I mean, the
right.
same thing. I don't know the analogy for number of data centers that you could throw in. It's not going to be as many because they're huge. But if they could find a way to run where they avoid the peaks, this is getting into a flexible capacity. Because the way the grid works is basically, all right, we know what our capacity is. How many things do we have, and what are they essentially subscribed for? Even though it's not a subscription per se, but you have grid planners that are going, all right, we have this customer who uses this is the capacity they need, and this customer has this capacity, and you total them all up on a feeder or on a substation, and then like, okay, how much do we have left over? It's this much or this much, and then if a data center would like to site itself in that area, then you look at that. You can look at that difference. Do we have room for it or not?
Yeah, I don't really care about data centers. I was just trying to be topical. Everybody talking about them.
But if you could
Real
go, if you
magic.
could look at that from a flexible standpoint, if the grid planners were not just looking at a top line capacity number, which happens, a few hours during the hottest day maybe, And they could look at uh, spatial, because they know where this thing is going to connect on the grid, and temporal. And that data center could say, yeah, I will, for these specific days, I can guarantee you that I will not consume electricity, um, whatever that amount is, to make sure it avoids adding to the peak, but can utilize all the other times. Theoretically, that's not something that's really done. But if you had a flexible capacity approach where there would have to be a contract and a commitment to do that from that data center customer in this case, or you know whoever that is asking for that capacity, then you'd be able to say, all right, great, we've only got you know these specific days or times. You have to shut off, and if you don't shut off on your own, we will shut you off. Um, but that's part of your agreement, so that we can get you connected to the grid.
So that's yeah, I mean, I think that's great. My next question was actually going to be how does grid utilization and capacity challenges represent itself in the real world as it relates to larger load interconnect projects like data centers, fleet, electric fleet depot charging and things like that. And I think you kind of just answered it.
Yeah, a bit, but it's a first come first serve kind of thing, because I mean, how else could I mean utilities aren't allowed to have somebody shovel them some money to go to the front of the line. Whoever asks for capacity and connection to the grid first has to be evaluated first, and then you just go down the list. Um, but they that causes its own problems, because you have essentially some people who will speculate and start interconnection requests, or like a data center, for example, they may be considering 30 different locations with 20 different utilities for this one data center, and they could begin new service requests with all of them. And so you've got this large block of load that all of these different utilities and planners think might be showing up on the system, and they have to evaluate it and decide whether or not they can host it. If not, are you going to commit to this project, because we may need to build a new substation or a new line. And so there's some kind of Wild West kind of speculation that can happen that's not helpful. It's not helpful to utility or grid operators, for sure. All right. Thank you, Will. Thank you for doing all of the hard work, the heavy lifting. I appreciate it. I know our listeners will as well. This first part has been I've enjoyed this a lot, to be honest. Having you do the work for me is great. Let's keep doing this, Will.
All right, yeah.
But we have some more topics that we'll cover in a part two. I think we'll probably wrap it all in that part two. But if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Please like the podcast. Please send us a note. You could even just send us an email to say hi. But especially if you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear them. The charging curve at gmail.com. We look forward.
Yeah, and a big thanks to Jeff for putting up with all my questions. We got more to come. Thanks, everyone.
All right. We'll see you.